The studio was alive with a strange energy that night, the kind that always precedes political fireworks. Rows of cameras lined the front of the stage, their blinking red lights signaling that millions of Americans were watching from their living rooms. The host's polished smile did little to mask the unease in the air. Everyone knew this segment would be heated, but no one could have predicted how quickly it would spiral. Thomas Massie, the sharp-tongued congressman from Kentucky, sat comfortably in his chair, leaning back like a man confident in the chaos he was about to unleash. Known for being independent to the point of stubbornness, Massie wasn't the type to shy away from controversy. Tonight, he had chosen his target with surgical precision, Donald J. Trump. When the host asked a routine question about the state of the Republican Party heading into the next election, Massie leaned forward, his voice steady but dripping with disdain. "The truth is," he began, pausing just long enough to draw the audience closer, "Donald Trump is more of a liability than a leader. He divides us, he doesn't guide us." The words detonated like a bomb. Gasps erupted from the audience. The host's smile faltered, eyes darting nervously toward the cameras. Even the panelists sitting off to the side shifted in their seats, suddenly unsure how to react. In the control room, producers were already shouting into headsets, their voices sharp and panicked. This wasn't just a soundbite, it was a political earthquake, and it was happening live. Massie, emboldened by the stunned silence, pressed forward. He accused Trump of clinging to outdated battles, and suggested that the GOP would never be able to win new voters if it remained in his shadow. "We can't afford to be a personality cult," he declared, his voice growing louder. "If we want to lead America into the future, we need to move beyond Trump's theatrics and start focusing on real leadership." It was clear this wasn't a slip of the tongue. Massie had planned every word, every pause, every jab. He knew the cameras were rolling. He knew the MAGA base was listening. And he knew his words would reverberate through every news cycle for days. Almost instantly, social media ignited. Hashtags like #Massie vs Trump and #MAGA Unite lit up Twitter. Some users cheered Massie's boldness, praising him for saying what needed to be said. But for every one of those, there were dozens more denouncing him, calling him a traitor, a rhino, or worse. The digital battlefield mirrored the raw tension inside the studio. Massie, sipping from his glass of water, wore the smug grin of a man who thought he had seized the upper hand. To him, this was his moment, his chance to show the nation that the Republican Party could survive, even thrive, without Trump. What he didn't realize was that his words had awakened something far more dangerous than a Twitter storm. Backstage, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio sat watching the monitors, his jaw tightening with every insult Massie lobbed. Vance was no stranger to political combat. He had risen quickly, propelled by the very movement Massie was now ridiculing. To Vance, Trump wasn't just a political figure, he was the embodiment of a revolt against the elites, a symbol of the working class voices long ignored. As Massie continued, Vance leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. He knew what awaited him. In just a few moments, he would be called onto that stage. And when he was, it wouldn't be to deliver a polite rebuttal or a carefully measured counterpoint. No, this was war, and Vance had no intention of letting Massie's insults go unanswered. The producers counted down in the background. The audience buzzed with anticipation. And somewhere deep inside, Massie believed he had already won. What he didn't yet grasp was that J.D. Vance was about to walk out with a response so sharp, so devastating, that the entire MAGA nation would rally behind it for weeks to come. When J.D. Vance entered the studio, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The audience, still buzzing from Massie's provocation, erupted into applause. Some clapped out of excitement, others out of relief, but all eyes were fixed on the young senator from Ohio. He walked with a calm confidence, shoulders square, chin lifted, not the posture of a man who was about to dodge controversy, but of someone ready to dive into it head on. He shook the host's hand, acknowledged the audience with a nod, and took his seat. But even as he sat, his gaze found Thomas Massie and lingered there. It wasn't the glare of hostility, nor the grin of mockery. It was sharper, colder, an unspoken promise that Massie's words wouldn't stand unchallenged. The host, sensing the moment, wasted no time. Senator Vance, you've heard Congressman Massie's comments. Do you agree that President Trump has become a liability to the Republican Party? Vance leaned toward the microphone, his voice low but resolute. No, I don't agree, he said, pausing long enough to let the audience register the weight of his words. Then, with his tone hardening, he continued, what Congressman Massie just said isn't just an insult to Donald Trump. It's an insult to the millions of Americans who finally found a voice in him. You don't get to dismiss their movement with a smirk and a soundbite. The studio erupted. Applause thundered, mingled with shouts of approval. Massie shifted uneasily in his chair, his confident grin now flickering with uncertainty. Vance pressed on. Let's be clear. Before Donald Trump came along, how many politicians from either party were fighting for the steelworker in Ohio, the coal miner in West Virginia, the truck driver hauling freight across the country, or the farmer in Iowa praying for fair prices? For decades, those people were ignored, forgotten, left behind. Trump gave them a voice, and for that, you call him a liability. His words sliced through the air like a blade. Even the hosts, usually eager to move the conversation along, sat in stunned silence. The crowd was no longer just listening, they were hanging onto every syllable. Massie tried to interject, fumbling with his microphone. Senator Vance, that's not what I. But Vance didn't let him finish. His voice grew sharper, louder, drowning out the attempted defense. No, Congressman, that's exactly what you meant. Because here's the truth. The real liability to our party isn't Donald Trump. The real liability is career politicians who would rather tear down their own team than fight the Democrats who are driving this country into the ground. The audience erupted again, louder than before. People were on their feet, clapping, cheering, some even whistling. The energy was electric, raw, almost uncontrollable. Massie looked around, clearly rattled, as if searching for an ally but finding none. And then came the moment, the line that would be replayed endlessly on news loops and blasted across social media. Vance leaned slightly forward, his eyes locked on Massie, his tone calm but lethal. You don't save a ship by drilling holes in the hull. And you don't save America by attacking the man who made millions believe it could be great again. The studio exploded. The ovation drowned out everything else. Even the host struggled to quiet the crowd as chants of USA, USA broke out in the back rows. Social media ignited within seconds. Clips of Vance's rebuke went viral. Hashtags like hashtag Vance Clapback and hashtag MAGA Unites shot to the top of trending lists. Supporters hailed him as Trump's fiercest defender, while even some skeptics admitted he had delivered the knockout blow. By the time the broadcast ended, it was undeniable. Thomas Massie's calculated insult had backfired spectacularly. What was meant to weaken Trump had instead strengthened the MAGA movement. And at the center of it all was J.D. Vance, standing tall, his reputation transformed from a rising star into a full-fledged champion of the cause. That night, one truth became clear: you could take a shot at Trump, but if J.D. Vance was in the room, you'd better be ready for the kind of clapback that could end a career.